Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of Danny Phantom. Okay, so this episode, Life Lessons, is, well, essentially the premise of the episode is that, it's essentially they have to take care of a flour sack, which is where the title of the episode comes in, but also, Skulker wants to, essentially the other premise of the episode is that Skulker sees Danny and Valerie fighting at one point and decides that the best way to, he decides that he wants to make them compete against each other to see if they can hunt, to see if they would, hunt each other and make them see if he can find whoever's worthy of the hunt by seeing who would win. But, in any case, the episode opens up with that, where Danny is using his ghost powers to go to school because, as we discovered, and is kind of, I think, against regulation, but the bus we find out is very overcrowded, and there's just no room for Danny. He would have to overshadow somebody or hide inside of them to get in there. But in case he does remark that that's the one benefit of ghost powers. He doesn't have to be crowded inside a school bus. But to this point, where he winds up where we find out that Skulker is actually watching him, and I should mention, from this point onward, Skulker has a new voice actor. I don't really know the reason why, but I know that Kevin Michael Richardson replaces Skulker as the voice in this from this episode onward. But I don't really know the story behind that. All I know is that he had one voice actor and now he has a different one. He sounds a little bit off, but he mostly sounds fine. And also it's Kevin Michael Richardson, so it's not really a big deal because Kevin Michael Richardson is cool. But in any case, as he's about to remarks that he's about to hunt Danny, he then sees Valerie blast Danny with it was a laser blast and knock him into a water tower, and of course, they then proceed to exchange banter back and forth with Valerie asking Danny if he missed her, and Danny remarking that no, but of course he thinks that she missed the water tower, and it almost hits her. At which point they proceed to fight a little bit more, and Skulker, noting how worthy both of them are as prey, uses his intangibility to watch them them fight for a bit, but admits that he's not entirely sure who would be the better prey to hunt. Obviously, he points out that he did swear an oath that he would make Danny's pelt a part of his collection, but does remark that Valerie seems like she would be the more interesting person to prey to hunt, and ultimately. The two of them eventually stop fighting once they realize that they're late for school and need to hurry to class. So they eventually break it off and go their separate ways for a brief moment. And while Skulker proceeds to watch both of them just kind of change into their civilian identities. And we find out that Valerie's suit has essentially been designed to collapse around her and just hide under her normal clothes. So he does wind up seeing that, but he then sees them both run off the class and remarks that in order to figure out who should be the best person worthy of them being hunted, then proceeds to remark that he will determine that by having them fight each other, which of course winds up being the main premise of the episode. He proceeds to repeatedly instigate a fight between the two of them to see what happens, and of course, meanwhile, interestingly, they both call themselves, names, and then proceed to run into each other, trying to get into Miss Tetzlaff's health class, and they wind up running into each other, calling each other the exact same names they called each other 5 minutes ago, which is very fitting. But it's a case where Miss Tetzlaff then yells at them for being late. And also reports that since they're the late stragglers, the two of them will be paired together to take care of a flour sack as health for their health class, which of course neither of them want to do because obviously they hate each other. That's established. But in any case, that winds up being the main premise of the episode, where everybody has a flour sack, and we find out Tucker and Sam have been paired together. And Tucker, of course, taking the whole thing in stride by just by pointing out that the entire point of the project is to teach everybody responsibility. With of course, Danny being very confused as to what that means. But then we see Quan and Dash passing one of theirs around like a football, and of course Tucker remarks that they're only going to be doing most of them are going to be responsible. But of course, Sam then proceeds to remark that obviously she does not like the whole assignment because she thinks that that she's always found it a little bit weird that they're taking care of a flower sack and thinks it's supposed to be some sort of baby. But of course, meanwhile, Danny of course remarks that he's not particularly excited because obviously he has to work with Valerie, who is obviously hates him for ruining her life. Even though as Sam explains, as far as Valerie's concerned, neither of them know their secret. Obviously, Danny knows Valerie is a ghost hunter, but Valerie doesn't know that Danny knows that she's a ghost hunter, and also doesn't know his secret identity. So, as far as Valerie concerns, neither one of them knows their secret. So of course, they point out that they should just play it cool and just learn about the whole. Just take the opportunity to just kind of grow closer and just kind of figure things out and maybe turn things around with them. But this winds up being completely dashed when of course Valerie then proceeds to walk up to Danny, remarking that she knows they don't like each other, but also remarks that Danny needs to pull a fair share of his turn to take care of the flour sack, remarking that and essentially the graph she uses is like 90% Danny and 10% her. But and of course Danny openly objects to this, pointing out that obviously he feels like putting the brunt of the baby brunt of taking care of the quote-unquote baby on him is completely against the point of the assignment, which is that they're supposed to care for it equally 50-50. But of course, Valerie points out that she's too busy to take care of it, and also remarks that she needs a good grade on this assignment. So she knows that Danny will take good care of it. So for that reason, she's deciding to leave it in his capable hands, and then leaves with Danny being literally holding the bag because he has no idea what he's supposed to do to take care of the baby. But of course, what we find out is that the flour sack has a series of technological gizmos in it to make it simulate an actual baby. It's essentially able to cry when it's not shaken, when it's not shaken and moved around and all those other things, and is also remarks that it is not safe. That's obviously it also, as we find out, it also is capable of quote unquote crapping itself, which which makes it smell like beans for a few minutes, but of course Tucker points out that it's not actually really pooping, but Danny does remark that he's kind of sick about the fact that he has to take care of the baby, but and of course does proceed to remark that he has no idea at which point they see the mascot of the Nasty Burger, Nasty Nat, and decide to take a picture with him, as kind of about the quote-unquote family picture, with Sam being a little bit upset about the idea that she has to take a quote-unquote family picture with Tucker, and then after they take a family picture, they ask Danny if he would like to take one, but that remarks that he would need to figure out where the mother actually is, and he doesn't know where she is at the current moment, so obviously, for that, but of course, while he's trying to figure that out, Skulker then proceeds to remark that he needs to find some way to get both of them to fight, and also remarks that he'll need to figure out the perfect prey for that. So he pulls out his box of rare ghosts and starts looking through all of them to figure out what he wants to pull out, and of course, it's at this point where he discovers the perfect ghost, which is revealed to be the box ghost, and he proceeds to gag the box ghost because the box ghost was trying to be annoying, like, as per always. And it's at this point where Danny remarks that he doesn't even know the first thing about changing a diaper as well. But Tucker points out that he knows it's okay because he knows. And at which point he reveals that he can turn his backpack into a big old changing station for babies. And he does start changing the baby with Tucker wondering Danny wondering how Tucker was able to afford all these things, but Tucker remarks that it's just basic parental instinct things and that you can get them kind of cheap. But of course, while Danny and Tucker are kind of talking about changing the baby, they see the box ghost being slung up and down by Skulker like a yo-yo, which is pretty funny. But eventually the box ghost does manage to get his gag off and does bellow out a beware, which terrifies everybody inside the Nasty Burger. And Danny's ghost sense at this point also goes off, and he quickly realizes he's going to need to deal with the box ghost before he terrifies somebody. So, because the box ghost isn't a big threat, but obviously Danny's worried about him scaring somebody nonetheless. So he immediately goes into behind the Nasty Burger to change into his ghost mode, and runs into Nasty Nat, who is implied to be Valerie because we hear her voice come out of the costume. And of course, at this point where they proceed to both change into their ghost hunter civilian identities, which and of course Danny immediately tells Tucker to watch his baby, pointing out, but with Tucker remarking that he's not a babysitting service. Although Danny gives him $5 to do it, so of course he proceeds to take care of Danny's baby and keep it safe from harm. And it's of course at this point where obviously Danny starts trying to find the box ghost because he's realizing the box ghost is going to be a major threat. But it's at this point where Valerie appears in her ghost hunting outfit and starts shooting at him, with Danny just once again fronting his frustration at Valerie, remarking that Valerie complains that she's too busy, but then somehow has enough time to hunt him anyway, and that kind of pisses him off. So, of course, Skulker proceeds to watch all this, and does remark that he's very excited to see the two of them fighting. It's because now he remarks that his hunt can officially begin once he's determined a winner. And this, of course, causes Valerie and Danny do fight for a bit, but we quickly discover a problem, which is that obviously, if Danny uses which is obviously Valerie's weaponry is causing a whole lot of mass destruction. Case in point, she almost knocks the Nasty Burger sign over on Tucker, and it's only because of Danny that he survives. But of course, he quickly realizes Tucker does thank him for the save, but Danny remarks that he'll do it any time, but also does tell Tucker that he needs to figure out how to stop the whole but also Tucker does try to charge him extra as well. But Danny, of course, tells him that he can bill him later, but does remark that he needs to end the fight before people get seriously hurt. And sure enough, he then proceeds to use his ghost. He then proceeds to turn back into his human mode and hide amongst the crowd. And since Valerie doesn't know that Danny's a half ghost at this point, she remarks that she can't find anybody, but does remark that she'll have to leave before she hurts somebody. And with that, the fight ends with Skulker being frustrated about the fact that there's no winner. So he obviously vents his frustration at that, and does remark that he'll need to figure out some sort of strategy to stop to get them to do what he wants. But he doesn't really figure out. He's still trying to figure out how to do that, of course, at this point. But of course, Danny at this point is very visibly frustrated at Valerie, who is currently working out. And what we find is that she has a bunch of newspaper clippings and other things about Danny in her room, as Danny Phantom, I should mention. But she's training herself, finding out that she's going to defeat those no good ghosts. But it's at this point where Danny proceeds to knock on her apartment door. And he does remark that he's been taking care of the flour sack for a lot up until this point. But in case of this point where after the fight breaks out, Tucker realizes that he overhears a conversation between, well, more of an argument, but he hears a conversation between Valerie and between Dash and Paulina, who were also partnered together on their respective flour sack, and obviously are fighting over who should take care of it. With obviously Dash remarking that he can't hold on to it during cheerleader tryouts, while Paulina can't take care of it. No, Dash can't take care of it during. Paulina can't take care of it during cheerleader tryouts. Dash can't take care of it because of his because of his football game. But it's at this point where Tucker walks up to them and remarks that he may have a solution that can solve all their problems. But in case, meanwhile, Valerie is currently training seen training in her apartment obviously working out while also revealing that she has a bunch of newspaper clippings of Danny as Danny Phantom in her room, and is using that to motivate herself, remarking that he's not going to get away the next time. But it's this point where she hears a knock at her apartment, and he immediately and Danny, of course, is at this point very mad at Valerie for essentially not pulling her own weight, as he puts it. And it's at this point where he hands her the flour sack, remarking that she does need to start pulling her weight, and is obviously very visibly frustrated about the fact that Valerie has skewed the entirety of the workout between their respective flour sacks as essentially 90-10 on Danny. And of course he then proceeds to dump the flour sack in her hands before leaving. With of course she insists that she can't really take care of it because of her job, because of what she does. But Danny calls her out, pointing out that she already knows what she does, and does wonder who told him. But he remarks that it doesn't matter because he points out that he's just frustrated. So he dumps the whole thing on her, telling her that she needs to pull her own weight. And with that, he starts to leave. But she tries to get him to stay, remarking that she needs to get a good grade on this assignment, or her father will be really upset with her. But he does but Danny just coldly tells her that she should really just learn to take care of the flour, that it's probably a good sign that she take care of the flour sack more than anything if she's worried about her grade. At which point he leaves. And meanwhile, Skulker watched this entire conversation outside of Valerie's window, and does remark that he notes that the flour sack seems to be important to both of them. So for that reason, he concludes that is ultimately what he's going to do with it, but what he's going to do to get them to fight. And this time he then proceeds to use his ghost powers to turn invisible, and while Valerie's trying to take care of the flour sack, grabs it and makes it levitate using his ghost powers, which of course Valerie immediately changes into a ghost hunting gear to fight against it. And it's at this point where Skulker Danny hasn't left the apartment building yet, so he senses Skulker with his ghost sense and goes ghost mode. At which point he sees Skulker with the flour sack, and of course Danny demands to know what he's doing there. At which point Skulker remarks that he's framing Danny. At which point he throws the flour sack into Danny's hands and leaves. At which point Valerie comes out and immediately misunderstands that Danny, of course, she thinks that Danny is there to hurt her flour sack because she saw a ghost take it. So of course she is upset with Danny over that, pointing out that telling him to drop the flour sack and nobody gets hurt. And of course Danny at this point tries to explain to her that it wasn't him and that it was a ghost named Skulker. And he tries to explain that to her, but she isn't listening. So he immediately has to flee to kind of get the flour sack away from the danger, and eventually into an empty field where he knows that it'll be safe. At which point he places the flour sack down, telling her that he's placing it down and that he doesn't want any trouble, that he's not going to hurt it. And of course this causes Valerie to, and of course he also knows that Valerie doesn't want to hurt it either. So Valerie then proceeds to put her weapons away, and Skulker, frustrated about the inconclusiveness of there not being a winner, then decides that he needs to take more drastic measures by remarking that he's going to hunt them both. At which point it's revealed that Danny unintentionally lured both of them into a trap, and Valerie becomes angry at Danny, but Danny tries to explain that it wasn't him, and they both get electrocuted. And when they wake up, they are handcuffed together, and Valerie immediately starts panicking because she starts looking around and sees that she's in the ghost zone, and Danny is also confused about being in the ghost zone. But it's at this point where Skulker then finally introduces himself to Valerie, and then proceeds to remark that due to their expert prowess as both being really good ghost hunter to prey for him to fight, he remarks that he's going to hunt them both, and does tell them that obviously they are going to absolutely have to figure out how to work against him, but that they won't ultimately escape and that they won't survive. At which point we find out where Skulker's taken them, which is his own private island in the ghost zone, which his main location within the Ghost Zone, it seems, because it has his face on it and it's a private island that he owns. And of course, Valerie immediately starts panicking, wondering where she is and what's going on, and where the ghost zone, where exactly they is, and who it is, and who that is, and everything else. So Danny proceeds to calmly explain to her, in order of her complaints, that they're in the ghost zone, that Skulker, the world's greatest ghost hunter, and that they're ultimately stuck there unless they can find a way to get away from him. And of course, at this point where Skulker declares that he'll give them a 5-minute head start, and they proceed to race deeper into Skulker's island. And Danny, of course, tries to blast Skulker with his ghost rays, but discovers that the handcuffs that they're wearing ultimately do not allow Danny to use his ghost powers. They negate his ability to use ghost rays and other things. And he realizes that he needs to escape. That he obviously cannot do anything with Valerie attached to his wrist like she is. So but eventually Valerie does wind up finding one of her weapons. But Danny tries to pick it up. But Danny tells her not to do that because it could be booby trapped. In case in point, he gets hit with a dart, and as a result of that, which causes him to become paralyzed and unable to move. And of course, Skulker does explain that that's exactly what it is, pointing out that it's temporary, but he also pulls out a weapon remarking that it won't be temporary, at which point he tries to destroy them, and Valerie immediately tries to run away and keeps trying to get away from them, while Hassan kind of dragging Danny behind her, with Danny remarking that he's happy that she's finally pulling her own weight, even though he's being badly injured because he keeps getting face slammed into rocks. But eventually, she reaches the edge of Skulker's island, and realizing that she doesn't have much of a choice, as Danny slowly starts to kind of recover from the paralysis, she remarks that she doesn't have much of a choice and leaps off of it and reveals that Skulker may have stolen all her weapons, but he didn't steal everything, and then proceeds to summon her glider from her boots, which she and Danny then proceed to use to escape. And at which point Danny remarks that they are going to need to work together to get out of the ghost zone, and with Valerie wondering why she should even trust Danny, but Danny just reminds her that they're handcuffed together, so she remarks that that's a fair point and wonders where they're supposed to go. And he then proceeds to tell them that all of the doors flowing through the ghost zone are leading to various ghost realms, and they can potentially use one to find a ghost portal and get away from Skulker. So for that reason, he does remark that they'll need to just find one. And of course, they pick the wrong one almost immediately, but they eventually do find one that works, and they go and hide inside of it. And of course, Skulker is looking around, trying to figure out where they are, using his jetpack, but does remark that he can smell them. They're close, but he also remarks that they smell like beans. And remarks that one of them must have been eating a burrito recently. But meanwhile, Tucker is of course using his ability. Has of course taken the babysitting thing way too far. Essentially, he is starting his own babysitting service called Flower Power Babysitting Service, and he is taking care of all of the babies, all of the quote-unquote babies that nobody else wants to deal with because they are busy with their other extracurricular activities. And of course, he's very busy calling everybody, telling everybody what they can, calling everybody that the baby is safe, that they're fine. And Sam remarks that it's at this point where Sam kind of gets into the assignment a little bit, remarking that Tucker, of course, seems to be taking it a little bit too far, and remarks that she thinks it isn't really a safe one-on-one environment with their babies. So she of course points out that her baby needs to be taken care of with love, which Tucker does point out it does seem like she's finally gotten into the spirit of it, but also points out that now that she seems like she's taking it too far, because now she's actually kind of into the idea of raising her own kid, which is ironic because initially at the start of the episode she said otherwise and does a full 180 by the end. I do find that hilarious, but in any case, it is at this point where we're hiding in one of the various ghost worlds that they found, Danny then proceeds to Valerie then proceeds to remark that none of this would have happened if none of this would have happened if they hadn't been hunted by that if Danny hadn't gotten them trapped in the ghost zone in the first place. But Danny remarks that obviously it wasn't him and it was Skulker. That's just why he explained the whole world's greatest hunter thing. But they eventually find a rock and try to break the chain on them, and of course she points out that this is only the second loser that she's been shackled to, with Danny being frustrated, wondering what that's supposed to mean. But she then proceeds to explain that she's obviously been stuck with a jerk who is not being very considerate of her time. And Danny then proceeds to ask her that maybe she wasn't pulling her own weight. But she then proceeds to explain exactly why she's frustrated with Danny Fenton. Specifically, she points out that she's been having to work 2 jobs just so she can afford college. But Danny, of course, was inconsiderate and did not care. So she proceeds to vent that to Danny Phantom. Ironically enough, she doesn't realize they're the same person at this point. So, of course, she vents her frustration, and it's at this point where Danny realizes that he was kind of being a jerk. But it's at this point where a video call appears out of both of their shackles, and it's revealed that Skulker has essentially stopped trying to hunt them throughout the nethers of the ghost zone. And remarks that obviously they are going to need to come to him because he remarks that they have something they want, and holds up their flour sack. And of course both of them immediately panic. But Danny tries to play it off as the fact that he doesn't really know why the flour sack is important. He just knows that it is. But obviously he panics because it's his quote-unquote baby. But in any case, they proceed to fly out to Skulker's island, and Skulker, meanwhile, is very visibly confused as to what the flour sack is actually supposed to be. Obviously, he doesn't understand the importance of it, but it does start crying, and he doesn't know how to make it stop that infernal noise, so he immediately pulls out one of his weapons to blast it. But he then proceeds to pull. It's at this point where Valerie and Danny then proceed to team up against him, using their shackle to kind of do a combo tag team ability so that they can fight against him. And Skulker ultimately is unable to do anything against him initially, and with Danny remarking that it seems that they've gotten the whole idea down. But there's this point where Skulker grabs their shackles, and Valerie realizes that they clearly did not get the tag team down. But in case, Skulker does remark that he's obviously remarks that they've been thorough hunters up until this point, but does remark that he also needs to ask them one question before about what the purpose of the flour sack is, because he's a ghost and he doesn't fully understand, because he's one of the few that is implied to have never been human. But in any case, they do decide to answer his question, pointing out that it's not what the flour sack is. It's what the flour sack represents, and about how the point is to take good care of it. And with Danny adding that up until this point, Skulker's obviously been nothing but a bad parent. At which point, the baby proceeds to quote-unquote fart in his face, and which causes him to drop both the flour sack as well as Danny and Valerie. And it's at this point where Danny decides to give Skulker a taste of his own medicine by spying one of Valerie's guns, which has obviously been booby-trapped. And Valerie wonders what exactly he's doing, but Danny just tells Valerie that he's going to give Skulker a taste of his own medicine. At which point, he pulls on the gun, sets up the booby trap, and Skulker gets impaled with a series of darts that obviously fill him full of toxin. And unable to move, he proceeds to collapse. And now satisfied with the fact that they suddenly defeated Skulker, does tell him not to get up on their account. At which point, as a joke, they pick up their flour sack, which it's noted has become heavily damaged at this point due to all the fighting. But they do proceed to scoop it up, and Skulker does tell them not to go because he now needs to scratch his nose and he can't do it himself. So Danny proceeds to have the flour sack fart in his face one more time before leaving. And of course, at this point where Valerie tells Danny that they made a pretty good team, and of course Danny then proceeds to tell her that yes, they did make a good team, and at which point Valerie asks why she never tried to trust him before, but at this point it's because Danny pointed out that he hasn't gotten the opportunity to trust him up until now, and does ask if they can have a truce, and of course Valerie remarks that they have a truce for now, at which point she tells Danny to get her out of there, and Danny then proceeds to use his in-spirit to kind of fly her out of there, pointing out that he'll do it their way. And at which point, he proceeds to fly her out of the Phantom Portal and back to her apartment. And, but then in the process, after he summons her armor and puts her to bed, he quickly discovers her robot. He quickly discovers her the Nasty Nat costume, and discovers that Valerie is in fact Nasty Nat. And now realizing what exactly what kind of job she's doing, he quickly realizes he has been an inconsiderate jerk. At which point Valerie proceeds to wake up from her in spirit, and Danny proceeds to hide behind the costume and tells her that he's sorry that he obviously snuck in because he knocked on the door and he didn't think anybody was home, and the door was open, and he proceeds to tell her that according to her schedule, it's his turn to take care of the baby, and she remarks that's fine, tells him to just get out, but she also proceeds to point out that he didn't know that this was what she was doing, that she was being Nasty Nat at the Nasty Burger, and she remarks that Danny didn't really take the opportunity to get to know her. And Danny remarks that that's ironic because he's supposed to be the good guy, and but plays it off as nothing when Valerie asks him what he's talking about. But in cases at this point where Valerie tells him to just do one thing, and it's to not be mad. Meanwhile, Tucker immediately goes to Sam's house, because while he's going through the inventory of all his babies, and also referring to them by the name of the dollar bill that he was given to take care of them, and putting them to bed, he points out that they're all his favorite except for his own baby. And when he discovers his baby is missing, he knows that Sam is immediately the one who took it. So he immediately goes to her house, where Sam has essentially made it up in the form of her, and is essentially designed to be her daughter. But of course, remarks that she looks so pretty. At which point, Tucker barges in and demands to have his baby back. So he proceeds to, but of course, Sam proceeds to argue back and forth with him, pointing out that obviously, in the context, Tucker's been raising. She points out that a baby needs a kind, nurturing environment, and not the baby farm that obviously Tucker has been running up until this point. And of course, Tucker realizes that he wasn't there to take care of his other babies. So he quickly realizes that Sam has a point, and accidentally kisses her on the way out, pointing out that he's going to go and take care of his other babies. But which Sam remarks that they'll never speak of again. But it's obviously supposed to be a thing about how he kisses her as like a mother and wife, as his wife and mother of his child, quote unquote, because he gets way too into it. And they just remark they're never going to talk about the kiss ever again. So, but in case Tucker leaves, and then proceeds to go back to his house, where he discovers that his mom has been making cookies, and he helps himself to one and remarks that they're pretty delicious. At which point she thanks him for that, pointing out that she's just thankful that Tucker was able to pick up so much flour for her. At which point Tucker realizes what happened and realizes all of the babies he had been paid to take care of had been baked into cookies, which is very unfortunate for him, as we find out in the final scene. As it turns out, Mrs. Teslaff is not happy about any of what happened. And what we find out is that there's exactly two people who got good grades. We find out that Valerie and Danny, of course, have gotten a C, because while their flour sack returns very heavily damaged, she remarks that at the very least it's not baked into a cookie. So she gives him a C for that. Meanwhile, Sam gets an A because Mrs. Tetzlaff points out that her parenting is a little unorthodox, and also is the only one who still has their baby. Does remark that she gets an A for that, which Sam being impressed by. At which point she then lets in the Tucker, who she obviously points out is the one who is the reason so many people have failed their assignments. And as punishment for that, she not only fails him, but she also makes him give back all of the money that he got from his babysitting service. And Tucker does, after giving away all the money. Sam does remark that it's okay because Tucker can still see their quote-unquote baby on weekends, which, of course, Tucker thinks is a bit of a slap in the face. But it's at this point where they accidentally run into Nassignac and discover that Danny is actually the one in the costume, and of course wondering who exactly it is, and wondering why Danny is in the costume in the first place. Danny then proceeds to he plays the pronoun game, but essentially he implies that Valerie was the one who was wearing the costume without actually saying that Valerie was the one in the costume. And remarks that since she wasn't a very good person, very nice to Valerie, he's decided to give her the day off. And of course, Sam picks up on the fact that it's Valerie because, well, Danny never said it was Valerie. She points out that he never said it wasn't. And of course, Sam then proceeds to point out that even despite that, she hopes that Valerie is appreciative of the fact that he gave her a break, pointing out that whatever she's doing, she's hoping she's having fun. At which point the episode ends with Valerie hunting the box ghost. Because, the box ghost, recurring villain, he's always the joke character. But in any case, so yeah, this episode kind of showcases that Valerie and Danny's relationship has improved somewhat. Because obviously, by being forced to work on an assignment together, obviously they were forced to bond. But also, because Skulker tries to hunt them in this episode, they were also forced to bond that way. So, her relationship with Danny Fenton and Danny Phantom have improved. Which I do think, not by much, obviously they have a tentative truce, but she at the very least now understands that Danny was made an effort to know her, and vice versa by getting to know Danny Phantom instead of just seeing them as this awful no good ghost who ruined his life. So of course, yeah, the episode does force them bond, and I like that. But also, the really funny little B plot here about Tucker running a babysitting service for sacks of flour, and ultimately failing miserably and getting his much-needed comeuppance, because in the process, all of his babies wind up getting cooked into cookies, and I find that funny and hilarious. For Tucker, yeah, of course, Tucker was a little bit greedy in this episode, taking everybody's money to take care of their babies, which they should have been doing themselves. And look where it got them, and look where it got him. So yeah, I do like the episode, but overall, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below, and also be sure to check out my Discord. Link is down in the description as well. Please go check that out. Go and check out my Twitch as well. Again, link is down in the description. Please go check that out. We're streaming horror games every Saturday and Sunday, so please go do that. And also, finally, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos link in the end screen. Well, the playlist link in the end screen because I changed it. But yeah, go check out the content linked in the end screen. The top video is the top playlist is my most recent playlist of one of these that I've done. I did Megas Month to celebrate my birthday last year. So if you have not seen that one, go check that out. Whereas if you have not seen Courage Month, the first one of these that I've done, then you can go check that out there as well. But in any case, yeah, and if you want to support me, go check out my Patreon. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!